Buy Beagle Bone Black.
And join our team for the contest. So you notice here, so if you were to hook this up with the USB cable and passing around the box, all you need to do is put that USB cable into your computer, put the other end into the BeagleBone here, and you can pull up the IP address that it shows you in the instructions, and you'll get this page here. I'm doing this over Ethernet instead in this case, but this is called Bone 101, and this takes you through the example. For web developer people, it's using something called WebSockets, I think, to connect from your browser to the BeagleBone. So it says here, okay, I know there's a BeagleBone there, and I'm connected to it. So what we can do is actually, there's a bunch of examples here where it uses JavaScript to control the hardware. So if you own one, I recommend working through this, but just as an example here, you can see, we come down to BoneScript. So BoneScript is basically a JavaScript library for the BeagleBone that allows us to control the hardware. So it's similar to how you use wiring, which is the language they use with Arduino. So you've got, like, you set the pin modes, you can do digital write, digital read, analog write, analog read, those high-level functions that you're used to. And in this case, the cool thing with this Bone 101 interactive guide that is just running on port 80 on your BeagleBone when you turn it on, is that we can actually edit and also run these code examples here. So the LEDs on here should change when we're running this.
Because I've been certified on all this.
And click run, and I think it's setting them all to high. So I guess they should all go probably high for a little bit, and then it set a timeout there for 2000. So we do pin mode, USR 0. These are the LEDs. So 0, first LED, second LED, third LED, fourth LED, and then we're saying make that output. So if you run any microcontroller stuff, like Arduino as well, you have to set the direction for the pin. So this is setting the pin for outs since they're LEDs instead of inputs like a button. And then we're just doing digital write to each of those LEDs, and we're saying high, which is going to make the LED turn on. And then we're going to set a timeout with 2,000 milliseconds or 2 seconds, and that's going to then revert back to the original state. So one of the things you'll notice here, which is unusual compared to like Arduino, we might just do like a more procedural microcontroller programming. You probably just sleep for 2 seconds. In this case, we're going to set a timeout with a callback of restore, which is a function that's going to then restore the previous state. So if you've done JavaScript programming before, it heavily uses callbacks, which is actually a pretty good use case for hardware because we're mostly just sleeping and waiting for things to happen. So it's like call this function when you see something change on this pin. So it actually works pretty well for doing hardware programming. So this is just a little example here, right off the bat. If we scroll down, we see there's actually a whole IDE, web-based IDE that's running on here as well. Kind of like Web IDE from Ethernet, if you're familiar with that from the Raspberry Pi. So with this, you can develop with JavaScript. You can develop these BoneScript examples in your browser and something that's a little bit more featureful than a text area. And it also, if you don't have a computer with SSH on it, you can use this web-based SSH client back as a terminal. And all these things I think you can get to by just clicking on them. So let me go back to Cloud IE. So if you just click in this Bone 101, I believe it opens up Cloud 9, which is a web-based IDE, kind of like Web IDE, which is Python, this is JavaScript. And I'm using Chromium. The standard Angstrom image has Chromium on it, Midori, I think in one other browser, but Chromium seems to run pretty well. So can do more stuff in there if you want, like develop in there, but we're not going to do that right now. So I would also say, if you want a more comprehensive overview of BoneScript, you can, I'll post a link on the meetup. There's also a link here on the BeagleBoard.org website. Jason Kreitner, who is the co-creator of BeagleBoard, along with Gerald Cooley, who's the hardware designer. Jason does all the software stuff, so he's done all the BoneScript stuff, and he did a presentation on this at OSCON. So you can check that out if you want a more comprehensive review of that. So I'll post some links in the meetup. But if you look here on the side, you can see, BoneScript has similar functions that you would find with Arduino. So I don't actually have anything hooked up here, but if we hooked up something
Similar, they lifted it. They just lifted the thing completely.
So it's much like wiring. Seems everyone seems to use these functions these days. So then another thing with the Beagle Bone Black is it has an ADC, unlike the Pi. So it does have a built-in ADC. It's 1.8 volts. You have to be careful when you use it. You use a voltage divider. What would be the best way to interface with a 1.8 volt ADC?
Use your operating condition.
Okay.
Why wouldn't you use a voltage divider?
What's that?
Why wouldn't you use a voltage divider?
Because then, when you go into the Duncan theorem, you want a low source resistance because the ADC has a shunt capacitor, and you don't want that time constant.
So what if you use 1K resistors and you're sampling it like a normal?
It depends on the application. Yeah, depending on the application.
So for a user interface or mechanical feedback, it would probably be okay to use a voltage divider, but for sampling,
It might be safer to use the voltage divider and just buffer it through.
well, here's the thing. You might not have room on the board, and it would be like another package and a lot more wiring if you're building it by hand. So the difference between using 2 resistors and using 3 resistors and a chip would be enough to make some people.
Right, depends on the application.
I'm asking if there's any, because I'm doing this right now. This isn't academic. I'm doing this right now, and if I'm doing something wrong, I'd like to know.
We can talk about it later, yeah.
Okay.
So you can notice when I'm web browsing that it's probably a pretty decent experience. I've been pretty happy with it in terms of web browsing. Much more easily than on the Pi. So this is another thing that you can check out, which I've gone over this before, I think, with the original white BeagleBone. But I'll post this in the meetup as well. This is BeagleBoard 101, which basically covers the BeagleBone as well. This is still talking about the white here. And I was saying this is still the case here that there's a lot of pins, and a lot of the pins have up to 8 different things that they can do. Like, it could be a part of the UART, or it could be part of SPI, or it could be a PWM pin, or it could be an LCD controller pin. So there's a lot of pin multiplexing that you can do. So that's one of the things that's key to getting right is setting the pins to the mode that you want for what you're doing. Which, if you're just using a cape, it handles that all for you. If you're making your own cape, then you need to think about that. Here's an example of some capes. Most of these do not run with the black. The biggest issue is really just getting them working with the device tree and the 3.8 kernel. More so than they just don't work out right. Some of the things like the MMC shield and like the HDMI shield don't really work because you don't really need them because it's got built-in flash and it's got HDMI built in now. But like these LCD tapes and motor control tapes and stuff like that, they all work or will shortly be working. This LCD 3 one here which is a little bit smaller than this one. I have this as well. I like this one a lot. I think it's like $60. It's pretty nice. I have a little software-defined radio dongle that I can hook up to it, and then we're in a spectrum analyzer, so you can walk around with the little LCD and see what the radio spectrum is. It's kind of cool.
Does the kernel already support that wireless keyboard?
This is not wireless. Oh yes, actually I've been using this with it. Though, if yours is like mine, this is just it's just an RF. It's not Bluetooth. So you just hook it up and it shows up as a hit device. So it'll pretty much work with anything.
It's just a USB keyboard.
Yeah, it's just a USB keyboard. It doesn't know that it's wireless. Yeah, which is nice. I do also have a Bluetooth one. That's more difficult to set up because you have to set up the computer to know that there's a Bluetooth keyboard hooked up to it.
And a driver for the Bluetooth device.
Yeah. So these are, thankfully these are cheaper and they're easier to use, so they're quite nice. I actually have one too. Unfortunately I left the dongle in my rental car in California, so I had to buy another one. I'm wondering if these will work.
They dug out the sand pits and replaced them with
Does anyone program in JavaScript?
Every day. And this is a terror. Fucking stick to what you're supposed to stick to. This is a bad abstraction.
So the nice thing is you don't have to do this. You can use Python or C or whatever you want to use. It's Linux. Jason Kreidner, who is the creator of BoneScript and basically the public face behind Beagle, he really loves JavaScript. He really loves Node.js. So he's really into it. So a lot of the educational material you see around the Beagle Bone is dealing with BoneScript, but you can still just run Python if you want to, stuff like that. So.
Well, wait a minute. You said I'm interested in this. I cringed when I first heard.
Yes, this is a wacky abstraction. Somebody thought it was a good idea and did it instead of like trying to figure out why it was a good implementation and then creating the design around it.
This is a really strong critique you're giving. Back up and.
I'm not going to do it on camera.
Okay. Well,
do you mean that you don't like JavaScript being used like this, or the implementation of BoneScript from a JavaScript perspective is not good?
I haven't actually seen other than the samples you gave. It's just it's shoehorning. It just doesn't seem like the.
Why?
You know.
It's.
Are you aware that it's just Node.js in the library?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
It's a religious thing too, just like thinking that Node is level one.
It's what?
It's a religious thing.
Thinking the Node is what? See, I don't do JavaScript, and I'm looking at it from the outside, but I'm looking at it a lot from the outside. I'm starting to see where some of the pieces fit together, but I have no first-hand knowledge of it. So the lay of the land that I have is from things like what you're saying right now, so I really want to hear what you're saying before I embark on this.
Is part of the problem that JavaScript was like before, it was running in the web browser, now running on the server side, but then this is physical computing. It's like,
And there are all the idioms associated with JavaScript have been honed for web for years and years, and now we're trying to shoehorn them into being this weird, like, event-driven model, and people are going to make some pretty severe code messes.
But when is JavaScript not?
Well, it always is, but there's ways that we have taught ourselves over the years to use JavaScript so it doesn't punch us in the face. And an example. Have you ever seen the Gary Bernhardt WAS video? That gives a couple of
It's like 3 minutes long.
Yeah, 3 minutes long, but it's just funny why this is happening is basically the premise of it. But I'm not an intelligent enough engineer to describe why. I do not have the communication skills associated with being a computer scientist and communicating why this looks weird. But it looks weird.
But I don't doubt that. Yeah.
Are you familiar with Arduino and wiring?
No, I'm not.
That's what this is. So all of the idioms that are coming here are coming right from that.
Except for the
So we're using, well, I will say,
The digital right stuff
coming
is
from
to make you more comfortable.
Yeah, sure.
That's
using
what,
the Arduino in like the JavaScript way is just odd. And to me, I would just jump into the C environment right away.
yeah, so
It's disorder.
That's all
If you
I
come from web, it makes sense. If you don't come from web, it seems like it's weirder.
It's weird, the cultural differences.
Yeah,
I see it from both sides. People see the Arduino and they immediately want it to recognize their voice or, like figure out something about an image or whatever. And it's like, no, it's an 8-bit processor. It doesn't do that. I've been using 8-bit microcontrollers across different architectures for a very, very long time. And I came at it from assembly and then C. So that's when I heard that JavaScript was going to be on an embedded platform. I thought, ew, gross. That's nasty. That's just like philosophically wrong, and I can't really say why. But as I'm looking at what JavaScript does and how common it is, it's like it's becoming the lingua franca of entry-level computing. It's like everything, and why not?
Windows 8.
Plus,
There's a terrible example.
Okay.
I mean, a good example.
Well, that was done in JavaScript.
the other
Well, no,
thing is-
all programming going forward, .NET is being canceled. They're pulling the plug kind of on that, and everything's going to be in JavaScript from now on.
Yeah, but event-driven stuff on embedded systems is hard to do. You have to write your own callback structure or use something that can do that for you, and that's not easy to deal with. So if this does it for you somehow magically, I don't know because I don't know JavaScript. What?
Node.js.
Yeah, but if it does the event stuff without you having to write a system that does callbacks, then it just sounds great to me because embedded control is all about reacting to events.
I no longer care.
It does sound like a very inventive thing.
Whoever
I mean, do I sound nuts beyond the fact that I sound nuts?
something wrong.
No. The code looks. The code
people
looks
are
like
asking as you were talking.
it has like 15 code smells in like 4 lines of code. It's like if you're calling the same method on the same object, you aren't abstracting correctly because you technically should be in an instance of a class.
that's the Arduino stuff coming out to make people feel more comfortable with the code that's already out there. They're making it be similar, even if it has code smells, because they're not targeting people who can write C or come C. They're targeting a lot of people who need to use a web ID and are possibly learning coding. So
And they're going to make your life support system.
hopefully not.
I'm not living past 40. Let's be fair.
It's a trade-off between do it right and be able to do it.
Yeah, and that's totally cool with me. And, I'm fairly certain that all the C programmers are just generally smarter than me anyway. But as far as things go, that's like an abomination of JavaScript. That's like anybody that does JavaScript daily.
If you don't like JavaScript, you can program in assembly with ARM and Neon. So I don't think it's here, but I know he has an interest in Neon, which is like their vector processing unit. So if you look at the Beagle Bone Black blog on Element 14, there's a member on there that's been writing some really cool posts. He just posted this today about the way you can use ARM and the Neon instructions to do image processing. There's also a diagram here of the processor, the system on chip processor is in there. It's just a car processor from TI. It has that ARM Cortex A8. It also has a GPU in there. Has the PRU, the programmable real-time unit I was talking about, the LCD controller, and then in this case he's talking about some of the instructions that are in that ARM CPU. So Neon does SMID, which is single instruction multiple data, which is basically vector processing, which I think that's what MMX was on Pentium. It allows you to do like multimedia type stuff in software. So that's why the BeagleBone can play video, it can decode video in software just using these vector processing instructions. So if you are interested in doing I guess, some more hardcore non-JavaScript programming, you can check out this sort of stuff. There's tons of this sort of stuff. So he's showing how you can do image scaling using those instructions.
I bet you $1 the second I looked at this, I'd go right to the JavaScript shit. It's just it looks like just a giant big bad piece of code.
This is kind of a silly thing, which I think a month ago I showed off, which was this drawing mustaches on your face with OpenCV. I was trying to go down farther because he has audio notes there. He also has on here a couple really good things about the programmable real-time unit. So if you're interested in the programmable real-time unit, check out these blog posts on the Beagle Bone Black blog. I can post links into the meetup, but like you wanted to hook up an LCD, so you can't just hook up an LCD to the frame buffer.
Yeah.
If you hook it up to the LCD line pins, then it's just going to show up as a frame buffer for Linux. But if you don't want to do that and you want to do it as a separate display, he gives an example how you can use the PRU to then offload drawing. So you like fill up the buffer. So the PRU has a memory map between userland and Linux. So you can load in the assembly program into the PRU, and then you have like a shared memory buffer between it. So you can do stuff like write into that buffer, and then have the PRU actually draw the graphics on like a separate display, which is an interesting example.
What would be the drawing?
That would be the assembly program that you write that's running on the programmable real-time unit. Connecting up an LCD, here we go. So, are there people that are interested in doing real-time stuff with the Bone? Me added JR, I think, at least.
Yes.
So, you had talked about the LCD, so he found a pretty standard, like just little color LCD here, and then he's got it hooked up, and then some Chinese descriptions in the data sheet. But I guess it's just using SPI or something like that. So
Really?
he shows how he's controlling it there. So you can also control all the I/O pins based on their memory map addresses. So, is there any questions, or does anyone have anything that they want to try and do?